I am Dracula. A moment ago, I stumbled upon a most amazing phenomenon. Something so incredible, I mistrust my own judgment. Look.
Dracula. The very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
Rats. 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 Thousands. Millions of them.
But no, this is no dream. This is Dracula, the original terrifying story of a maniac and a man who lived after death, lived on human blood, took the form of a vampire bat, and lured innocent girls to a fate truly worse than death.
Dracula? Oh, what's he done to you, dearie? Tell me.
He came to me. He opened the vein in his arm, and he made me drink.
Hi, I think we still have a few people who are coming. So we're going to run a 30-second countdown, and then we'll start. Hi. We still have 7 people struggling. I hope they're not lost. Neha, would you mind posting in Zoom again just to make sure they're okay? Or if anyone else is able to send a message out, maybe an email to let them know to come to this YouTube link. We're 5 people away, but I'll start. Thank you all for joining. We are still working out some of the communication kinks and the technological stuff. We're overloading a lot of technology here, so things may be a bit laggy, but hopefully it's going to be good. This Saunf is a live animated chat show that I recently initiated with my parents, and I'd like to turn it into a much more regular thing. And so my next guest will be my second guest of all time trying this new idea of the animated chat show. This is not part of the final show that we'd end up doing, but this is an entertainment way in to explain the project that we're going to be doing. This guest of mine is someone I've admired for many, many years, an exceptionally talented artist in a variety of ways, like a writer, director, puppet maker, and puppet master and performer. He's also very funny, and he's the youngest cranky old man I've ever met, and I love him for it. He's brilliant, and it's my great good fortune that he's agreed to work with me on this project. And he's also the one that came up with the name for the show, and we will reveal that to you once he jumps in. My guest tonight is the very exceptionally talented Eric Woolfe. Welcome to Saunf. Hi, before I bring my guest in, I want to let you know that we do have a comment chat function available here on YouTube. So you can post your comments and questions, and we will see if we can incorporate them into the chat. We would love to know what you think, and if it's one that we can post up, then we'll post it up here, and we'll try and address it as best as we can. We've got a bunch of stuff to cover, but that doesn't mean we don't have time to accommodate anything you have to say. Yeah, that's it. I want to welcome. Oh, one other quick thing. Eric's going to come in. You can see that I have a background. Eric will also have a background. They're from the same film. So if you know the film that they're from, post it in the comments. It's a little bit of a trick question. So see if you can name either the film, the year, the performer, anything you know about what this is a still from. Now, without further ado, please welcome my guest, Eric Woolfe, aka
Hey.
Eric of the Gloomy Abyss. Hello, Eric.
Hello. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Somehow
Woo!
we had 17 and we just lost 4 people. I hope they're okay. I don't know what happened. But
Well, they're in their basements. They're not lost. They're on Twitter.
I hope so. It's hard to know whatever's happened to somebody. It's like watching a radar and then the blip disappears. You don't know where they got sucked into a Bermuda Triangle of the internet. So Eric, I would you like to address my ornery old man comment, or shall we just keep going?
I don't. The only thing that is I think questionable about that is that you said I was young, which I'm not anymore. I just turned 49. I'm gonna have to let go of. He's a young, exciting artist with lots of potential, and I'm gonna have to be like, oh yeah, that guy in the bar. I think I saw him do a show in 1982. That's where I am now.
Right. Yeah. Well, me too. It's funny the way that time is compressing now, where everything is kind of blurring. You wake up and you go, whoa. I mean, it's exactly that but don't you think song, where do the years go, you know?
But don't you think you're aging into being like a veteran of stage and screen? Like isn't that you're aging into respectability, and like, oh yes, he's such an innovator, and he's political, and he's so talented, and he's been around forever, and I'm still like I'm still deep in the underground.
Eric, I have a cartoon face on, and so do you. No one takes me seriously. I've been trying for people to take me seriously all the time, but it's hard to do it when you're a goof all the time. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying.
So I want to actually do something here, which is I want to play a little quiz with you, Eric.
Okay. Oh, good. I like these.
So there were 2 trailers that I played coming into this, and I'm sure you know both. Well, they said the names of them, but you can identify what was similar between them, right?
Yes. Well, they're both early film adaptations of Dracula.
Right. So I'm now going to show you a few different actors playing Dracula and see if you know who they are.
Okay.
Okay. So here's one.
I can't see
I
him.
think I think we got
Christopher Lee, Horror of Dracula, 1958.
That's incredible that you would know the year. Yes, it is Christopher Lee, 1958. And now here's the next one.
That is Lon Chaney Jr. playing Count Alucard in Son of Dracula, 1947.
You're very close. It's 1943. It's incredible that you would know even that much,
Curses.
but still. So what I find remarkable is the significant difference. Like his is kind of an ambivalent response to the cross. Like what is that? But the Christopher Lee is so dramatic. And now here's
that's my favorite Dracula death scene too, because not only is Christopher Lee so dramatic, Peter Cushing is the most vibrant Van Helsing. And he's actually just at that moment, Peter Cushing has run across this long table, leapt through the air, and pulled this giant full curtain off the window, hitting Christopher Lee with this beam of sun. It's awesome. It's my favorite Dracula ending. So
spoiler alert. Okay.
Well, they know it's the end. He dies. It's not a Dracula movie unless he dies.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now here's a slightly more dramatic one.
Oh, that's tricky. That's the Spanish guy who played Dracula in the Spanish Dracula that was shot at the same time as Bela Lugosi, but his name escapes me.
His name is Carlos Villarreal.
Right.
I hope I pronounced that right. Yeah, Carlos Villarreal. And then I want to show you. I show you one other, which is probably the most famous Dracula.
Okay.
Here we go.
It's Bela Lugosi. That's easy.
Yeah, it's totally Bela Lugosi. And I want to show you. So now he's looking at it. Now here's the second one of him.
Bela Lugosi and Edward Van Sloan.
Yeah, so there's the first one he looks at it. Second one, he's kind of disgusted. And by the third one, he just looks like, get it away from me. It doesn't look like
I think it's all the same scene, though.
It is the same scene. It's three moments in the same thing, but there were three different pictures. I just really like the progression of like how he's identifying what it is. So the thing, can you identify besides Dracula, the thing that's significant in every photo that I just showed you?
Well, there's a crucifix in every photo.
Right. So this is what I want to talk about today.
Okay. All right.
We talked a little bit earlier at a different point about the respectability of horror.
Right.
And I think that respectability in some way, what I find an interesting contrast is that in the Dracula films, the cross as a Christian symbol is used to repel evil, repel Dracula. And yet the Christian orthodoxy in general was not into horror films and didn't support them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Do you have more insight or details or thoughts about that?
Well, no, really. I mean, yes and no. The idea of vampires being frightened by the cross goes back a lot earlier than film. So we have to go deep back into history of. And I guess we could, because a lot of horror origin in theater and film, at least, goes back to the medieval morality mystery plays. So that idea of the devil coming out at the end and swallowing up all the villains, and these sort of frightening plays of demonic torture being performed on the steps of a church. I mean, that idea of Christian good and diabolic evil goes way back into the warp and weft of horror stories. It is interesting too how I think in the 20th century that H.P. Lovecraft comes along and starts pulling that apart by making it sort of keeping the tropes of demonic forces destroying the world, but the what were demons 20 years before become these giant scientific space monsters. It's sort of like they're atheist demons.
Right. I guess what I find interesting is that religion isn't vibing with horror, and you'd think that it would be a really great synchronous relationship.
Well, except that I mean, there have been some Christian-based horror films, but they're all sort of they're kind of terrible. You have to go back a long time to when Christianity was inspiring art that was good and not just schlocky.
Yeah.
I mean, The Exorcist, you could always say, like, because The Exorcist, even though The Exorcist was condemned by the Catholic Church, it's as pro-Catholic a movie as you can have.
But that's what I find so interesting, is that it's a pro-Catholic movie. It's clearly a pro-Catholic movie, and yet the orthodoxy says, no, you shouldn't be watching that. You shouldn't be exposing yourself to that. So I wonder if it means that horror is connected to, as you say, a much more medieval way of storytelling or way of connecting with the world. And in that sense is kind of at odds with our modern day. Or if we just pretend that we're advanced and we're really not that far different.
Well, I think something that has happened in sort of the ghettoization of genre stories is that we at some point decided that things that were importantly cultural also couldn't be fun. So comedy is not an acceptable art. Comedies are not allowed to win Best Picture. If you're reviewing a comedy, you have to mention that it might not be as deep as the deeper fare going on at the main stage. And horror is to some degree similarly, or even more so, shunted to the side. Whereas if you go back prior to the century, elements of horror appear in all kinds of art. Macbeth is a horror play. Hamlet is a ghost story. There all kinds of novels prior to the last 200 years use horror elements as just part of the fabric of the story.
Would you say maybe that? Sorry, finish your thought.
No, go.
Well, would you say then that as science moves forward, as atheism moves forward, as the church evolves and develops, horror seems to be left behind where it used to be center place as an important way of controlling?
I don't think so. I think it's just becoming. I mean, I think we're talking about two different things. There is an artistic snobbery that we're in the middle of now, where in order to be considered an important work of art, some things have to adhere to certain political messages and have to be serious and talk about lofty ideas in ways that are not fanciful. Mm-hmm. That's one topic of conversation, but I think also horror, as the tropes of horror have become secularized. Instead of having I mean, we still have ghosts, we still have vampires, but the crosses don't always work. Usually they don't. We still have the demons are going to come, and we still have the Revelation story of demons are going to rise up and destroy the world, but they're not the Antichrist anymore. They're Lovecraftian inspired monsters. They're things you see in Hellboy. They're alien invaders. It's just that religion, I think, is becoming something we're embarrassed by. So we don't.
Yeah. So sociologically, what do you think caused that shift? If you're saying through Lovecraft and that period, is it modernization? Is it the Industrial Revolution that started to change things?
Well, I think all of that. Also, the church starts to lose its power,
right,
and is no longer able to commission works.
Yeah, I mean, I think from speaking with you briefly, there's an extent to which it feels like there's the fanaticism of religious people, hyper-religious people, but there's also a kind of fanaticism of horror people, because we had a conversation about the worlds that different characters from the horror world can live in, and that it's just you break a very cardinal rule if you put one character into another world. You can't do it, and there seems to be a fanaticism about that. Would you say?
I don't think, though, the topic we had for those listening at home, we were discussing the other day about, could you have Bela Lugosi's Dracula in a Godzilla movie? on and suggested that, and I was repulsed by the idea. But that's that idea. That's to me as much about like you don't put soy sauce on a burrito. They're from different. There's different aesthetic considerations and different flavors. They're from different time periods. There are different messages. There are different kinds of monsters.
Right.
I mean, one could make an argument that that 1953 Godzilla and 2006 Godzilla should never be placed in the same movie either. It's not a religious reason. It's an aesthetic problem or a thematic problem.
Right. It is one that you could amend, though. You could always correct it with the right type of storytelling, or do you think it's never possible to combine worlds? I don't want to know why you couldn't.
I think you can, but you have to, in order to, and it has been done. There's a great Rankin Bass, the company that did all the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Christmas specials. They had a ill-fated movie that they wrote with some of the Mad Magazine creators, where it is every monster from every movie ever goes to Boris Karloff's castle for a party. You can do that. You can do that.
You get the monster mash, right?
But there's an essential silliness to it, right?
Right.
And I guess that's okay. And I suppose there's a way. There's a way to do everything, but like comedy, some jokes are easier to tell than others.
No, it's true. It's like I often think of like a show like 24, where if it's really 24 hours, where's the moments where he's having a sandwich? Where, like,
yeah, and how can his daughter get in so much trouble in just 24 hours?
All the time. Because you referenced it, I want to show something quick right now.
Sure.
What an excellent day for an exorcism. And I'm the devil. You know what it did? The power of Christ compels you. It's me.
The Exorcist.
That trailer. Sorry, go ahead.
I was looking at the comments instead of watching the Exorcist trailer, and Carly had some interesting things that we could jump in on. But what do you want to say about the Exorcist first?
Well, all I wanted to say was that I have to say, in terms of the silliness that you were talking about, I remember seeing The Exorcist, and the trailer scared me more than the film. The film, there were parts of it that scared me, but my remembrance of it.
Well, but when did you see it? See, The Exorcist has been ruined because they've added half an hour of
I see.
You can only find the stupid director's cut now. And the director's cut destroys the pacing of the movie, which is what made it work up until, like, for decades. The reason it was so good and so scary is because it had this relentless pacing. And now there's endless scenes of Reagan going to the doctor and this, like, the famous spider crawl scene. And so for the last 15 years, it has been very hard for people to see the real Exorcist, and everybody thinks they have, but they've seen this fatty, overwrought, boring version.
Well, which one would you recommend? How would you?
Well, go back to the original release without the stupid extra scenes. So I guess I ranted over. I asked you a question and then I ranted over your answer. So when did you see it though? Which version did you see?
I'm not sure which version I saw, but the part of it that actually, the aspect of it that made it kind of a little bit ridiculous for me is when you see Regan there looking that grotesque, and the first time you see her, like, oh, and then you see her freaking out. It's really horrifying. But then at some point when the priest is in there, something about it just becomes, I've seen her face so many times and she's not killing him. They're just sitting there having a conversation that it kind of like, I'm like, oh, this is just like a conversation now.
Do you think, though, that that's just because you're so familiar with that makeup and that performance and spoofs of it? And maybe we can. I mean, Bela Lugosi's up there too. Bela Lugosi invented what we think of as the vampire. When you
Right.
do an impression of a vampire, you're doing an impression of Bela Lugosi, right?
Right.
And you can walk up to any kid on the street and say, "Hey, kid, sound like a vampire," and they'll go, "Blah, blah, I want to bite your neck." They're doing Bela Lugosi in the same way that when you do a pirate, you're just doing Robert Newton, who played Long John Silver,
Right.
right? So the power of those performances gets lost, I think, with familiarity.
Right. There's also, in terms of this stuff that we were talking about, religious iconography in cinema. There's an example that I'm going to show of religious iconography and how it's thematically very, very different in the way it treats religion. And I'll bring it up. I think you'll know what this is from. Let me drop us out and I'll bring it up.
Oh, that's the second Indiana Jones film. That's Temple of Doom, right?
It's Temple of Doom, and that's Amrish Puri. And if you look at him, the expression looks like it looks like the expression when he was called into wardrobe and they were telling him, like, so this is what you're going to be wearing. Watch. Because the thing is, in Christianity, we have that in the Western world as a basis, but we don't have a basis for Kalima or other religious ideas. So here it's posited as evil, and there isn't the same tension with it being the thing that saves the day. It's actually the thing that is ruining the day. And
but there's also like racism and the fact that it was sort of a poorly conceived adventure film at play too. It's a very different.
Yes,
they're very different intentions for both those movies.
Yeah, and I think that it ends up carrying through one of the things that you said inadvertently, which is political, social messaging.
Yeah,
through those choices.
I mean, the political social messaging of The Exorcist is I think less about religion and more about the dissolution of family. The reason I think there are two reasons I think it's lost. Three reasons I think it's lost some of its power. Two of them we've touched on. It's familiar. Most people have only seen the fatty director's cut, but also what fueled the fears of The Exorcist in the 70s was this idea that people are getting divorced more, families are falling apart, there's more single women, there are more working women. How can you be a working mother and raise a family? Isn't that so? So The Exorcist preys on, I don't want to say praise, is inspired by that societal fear. And now, like, everybody's divorced. There's no, that's not a thing anymore. We're just, oh yeah, it's a single weekend. The family can have two dads or one dad or a mom, or like, it doesn't, that doesn't resonate anymore because we're used to it.
Yeah, I think particularly because we are speaking now to reviewers, there's an extent to which social political context is so important in understanding the genre of the work that's actually being presented, that it's not in isolation, it's directly responding to the society. And related to that, there's something I'm going to play now, the trailer with another film that you referenced.
Eating the flesh of the people they murdered.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Probably be a lot more of them as soon as they find out about us.
All persons who die during this crisis, from whatever cause, will come back to life to seek human victims.
I'm telling you, they can't get in here.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
There is a line in that trailer that's hidden in every single Eldritch Theater play.
Oh, what's the
They're
line?
dead. They're dead. They're all messed up. Is in almost every Eldritch Theater play, hidden somewhere.
What does that mean to you to say that line?
Well, George Romero, who directed that, is I think, first the inventor of modern horror, and I think one of the great directorial geniuses. And he was also a really nice guy, and he hung out a bit. And I got to work with him. But oh yeah,
this is it here. Let's.
So that was Halloween night, and we were getting towards the end of shooting what turned out to be his last film, and we spent 4 days on the Toronto Island ferry all night long, and everybody was stressed and miserable. And it was Halloween, and I wasn't able to go out trick-or-treating with my kids. So when I pulled into the studio lot, I ran into makeup and wardrobe and said, okay, I've got like 3 hours that I'm off in the middle of the night, so I want you guys to make me up as George for Halloween. So I at one point in the night, George called cut, and then I called cut, and then I walked out doing my best George impression with a cigarette and a coffee, going, is that NG? Can't we use that? What's wrong with that? Do we have to do that again? We don't have time. And George loved it, so I sat beside, he made me sit beside him as his mini-me, because he's a good 6.5 feet taller than I am. So I was mini George Romero for most of that night.
That's amazing.
That was awesome.
I want to look at this picture again and see that. That's amazing. I'm glad he had a great sense of humor about it. One of the reasons I played the clip, though, is because so the trailer that I just played is a new trailer that was cut for the restored 4K.
Yeah, that's doing drive-ins. Yeah.
Yeah, so the original one that was cut was a bit more messy. It was much more the trailer aesthetic from that era.
Well, I told George that the Fox Theater near me was playing it when we were working together, and he said, "Oh, really? Did they find a good print?" And I said, "They said they found a good print." And he said, "There was no 20 minutes after we made that goddamn movie, there was no good prints."
Well, this one looked really good. That trailer looked amazing. You compare that with the original trailer, which I couldn't find a single good version of. But the interesting thing about this one is it says explicitly the perfect metaphor for a country tearing itself apart. And there is socio-political context just because of the casting in this. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, because was one of the first films that had a black man as a lead, and it is not addressed explicitly. But the part wasn't written for a black man either. The part was originally he was a white trucker, but George said that Dwayne was the best actor they knew, so they made him the lead. And because of it, because of that, the film has much more resonance. He always played down that it was a political decision too, but I called bullshit on him because he was a very passionately political man.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed to be a huge thing where you couldn't ignore. This is what I would say is a great example of color conscious casting.
Yeah.
Where it very directly informs the politic of the film and the aesthetic and the narrative.
Yeah.
It's not colorblind at all. There's no such thing.
No, and yet if you were to watch that film 50 years from now and not know if you were to come down from space and watch that movie in a future where there was magically no racial tension on Earth, it still works because it is the sermon of the movie. If it has a sermon, the sermon of the movie is when things go to rat shit, the problem isn't the monsters outside. The problem is how we treat each other inside.
Right.
It's people that are always good. That's his message of it. He was a clever enough and socially passionate enough person that extra layer is there, but it like the greatest of art. I mean, you don't need to know the politics of ancient Athens to understand Oedipus Rex.
Right.
And in the same way, Night of the Living Dead and other great art can live on past that
because it has that resonance. And if the audience will forgive me for saying so, she's not quite a Karen, but Barbara is a very specific trope in this film that seems to have a modern resonance. Would you say?
It's interesting, actually, because we talked a bit about Barbara, because Barbara starts off as Barbara begins as kind of whiny and henpecked, and then escapes and is then in shock for the rest of the film.
Right.
And when the famous story of Night of the Living Dead is that they were originally going to call it Night of the Flesh Eaters, and the distributor went, no, that's stupid, let's change it to Night of the Living Dead. So they changed it to Night of the Living Dead and didn't put the copyright on the copyright page, so it immediately went into public domain. And he never saw a cent of it.
What?
So he never saw a cent of it. He didn't make a single penny from Night of the Living Dead, except later on they would try to find ways to. So in 1990, he produced a remake of it in the hopes to get some sort of claim.
Right.
And one of the things that was very important to him in the remake was that Barbara have more agency. And in fact, Barbara is the clever one in the remake, because he always felt that he let women down.
Yeah, there's definitely an intersectional issue in that film with that it's really great for race politic in one sense, and then deeply problematic with the representation of women, for sure. I mean, no, I listen, artists should be able to create art, but
well, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess I'm of two minds of this, because I mean, obviously there was a thing that he felt he needed to change 25 years later. Right. Barbara's the one who survives. In the remake, Barbara is like, hey, wait a minute, they're so slow, fuck it, we can just walk away. And she just walks through them. She just walks away, and everybody else dies.
Huh.
She's like, we don't have to run at all. So but I bristle a little sometimes when there is the idea that never mind. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
I want to leave it at that.
We have to wrap up here, unfortunately. I would love to
continue
this conversation.
Good. I'm glad I didn't open that can of worms when you're like, and we're going to wrap it up.
No, it's we've already gone a little bit over, because I'd like to get everybody to hubs, but it's a shame because I want to extend this conversation. We are doing another part tomorrow, so anyone who wants to tune in, we won't be talking about the same thing. We're taking a totally different thematic conversation. It'll still be about horror, but we're talking about other things. So if you can tune in tomorrow, that would be great. I want to, so the audience has not weighed in. I'm going to put a call out again. Just very quickly, if you know, put it in the chats. If you know what the background I have and Eric has, it's from what film features
Alice Nelson. Hang on. Alice Nelson had a guess. She said Dracula, Bela Lugosi, 1931.
So that's a great guess.
That's the only guess. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great guess, and it's a trick question, because as Eric, you had said, there was the Spanish version that was shot at the same time. I'm just going to show you two pictures of the two leads that were happening. One being Bela Lugosi, the other Carlos Vieira.
It's it's very interesting comparing the back. Those photos are actually quite representative, because the original Dracula is actually very boring, except for Bela Lugosi and Dwight Frye.
Right.
The camera's very stationary, and it's actually not Todd Browning's best film. And the Spanish one is full of directorial flourishes and much more to a modern eye flows better, but it doesn't have that. Doesn't have those two amazing iconic performances in it.
Do you know why it's cinematically better?
because the DOP moved the camera. For some reason, Todd Browning decides that other than the opening scene, he's gonna shoot it like a stage play. It was based on a stage play.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of times watching it, it's like, I don't know, it's like watching something during COVID-19 when theaters shut down and everybody's streaming their old archival videos.
Right. I'm gonna present the answer in a short video now. So for the audience, Eric and I are gonna bid adieu, and we're gonna go back to Zoom and meet you there. Watch this short video. If you want to abandon it early, you can, but we will meet you back in Zoom for the next portion. So here's a video that explains the difference.
I am Dracula.
It's an iconic role from a game-changing movie.
Dracula? What's he done to you, DA?
Along with Frankenstein, it's credited as kicking off the Universal monster movie craze.
Rats, thousands, millions of them.
So important that it was selected for preservation in the United States Film Registry by the Library of Congress.
Dracula, the very mention of the name brings to mind things so evil, so fantastic, so degrading. You wonder if it isn't all a dream, a nightmare.
But it isn't one of a kind.
Buenas noches, Señor Renfield.
While Todd Browning's Dracula was shot on the Universal lot during the day, a Spanish-language version of the film was shot at night, using the same sets and storyline, directed by George Melford. This was a common way of making movies in the early days of Hollywood, and was done to create French, Italian, German, and in this case, Spanish versions of English-language films.
Todo ser viviente.
The film starred Carlos Valerius as Conde Dracula,
La sangre de Drácula corre ya por las venas de la señorita Sua.
Barry Norton as Juan Harker,
Me miras de un modo tan raro.
and Lupita Tovar as Eva Harker.
Dracula. Vino.
Rather than come up with his own take on the character,
Venga.
Valerius was encouraged to study the English production's rushes every day so that he might imitate Bela Lugosi as closely as possible. To save on costs, some long shots of Lugosi and alternate takes of the English version were incorporated into the film. Having the advantage of being able to view the English dailies, the Spanish crew would go out of their way to find better camera shots and uses of lighting in an effort to top it. For this reason, some critics and enthusiasts say this movie is better than the original. The film was thought lost until a print was discovered in the 1970s and restored.